Everyone in English media has pretty much been promoting this agenda. Mandatory masks, mandatory vaccination, vaccine passports, supporting the lockdown.
That's a clip from one of David Freiheit's massively popular YouTube videos. He uploaded it on the Thanksgiving weekend, and it tells you pretty much most of what you need to know about what this Montreal lawyer turned video talk show host talks about with his 343,000 subscribers. Freiheit is against a lot of the mandatory COVID vaccine passport rules. He's against vaccinating kids under 12 and against the extended COVID lockdowns. He's called Ontario Premier Doug Ford a fascist. He despises Justin Trudeau, and he interviews famous right-wing commentators, including Robert Barnes and Alex Jones. Yes, that Alex Jones, the American talk show host and alt-right conspiracy theorist who's been banned from Facebook, among other platforms. Recently, you might have seen David Freiheit's purple campaign signs around Montreal's Westmount and NDG area. It was Freiheit's growing outrage over how Canada has handled the COVID crisis and its impact on people's freedoms that encouraged him to enter politics. He ran for the People's Party of Canada in the recent federal election. He ran against the Liberal Foreign Minister Marc Garneau, and you can guess how lopsided the results were. Freiheit admits that he was maybe a little delusional for hoping he would win, but he remains encouraged by the growing popularity of the People's Party's message. 3 weeks ago, Freiheit tripled the success of his party in his riding from the previous election in 2019, and just like happened in the rest of the country when 800,000 plus Canadians voted for the People's Party, even though they didn't win any seats.
It still grew, and I think it's because enough people who are paying attention and have now had the opportunity to pay attention fully appreciate that there's only one party in Canada that is actual opposition to the powers of the Conservatives, Liberals, and NDP, and even the Bloc, and even the Green Party. I mean, they're all in lockstep on these issues of disregarding constitutional rights, full-blown COVID panic, at the expense of destroying, both the economy, the fabric, and the health of the nation.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. Welcome to the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. David Freiheit comes from a well-known Montreal family. He attended a Jewish day school for a while, and both the Jewish Y and Pripstein summer camp, and he was a lawyer until he left his practice several years ago and started making YouTube videos full-time, where he goes by the name of Viva Frei, Frei meaning freedom. With the Canadian election now 3 weeks behind us, Freiheit is filling out all the required paperwork he has to hand in to Elections Canada and winding up his campaign. And he's back to his day job, which is talking online. We'll speak to David Freiheit coming up about why he ran for the People's Party of Canada. But first, here's what's making news elsewhere in the country right now.
I'm Eitan Steinfeld in Thornhill, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like.
Tuesday, October 12th, is the 5th anniversary of Leonard Cohen's death. And this is the day on the Jewish calendar of his yahrzeit. So to mark the occasion, Montreal Rabbi Aubrey Glazer is holding an online event together with other Cohen experts where they'll unpack the poetry and mysticism of the Canadian icon's songbook. Rabbi Glazer wrote a book himself about Leonard Cohen, and he'll be joined by a couple of other singers and Cohen experts, including one of the founders of the Canadian Jewish band Jaffa Road, Aaron Lightstone. So today's event is free. It starts at 8 Eastern Time, and the link is in our show notes. The People's Party of Canada campaigned on lifting many COVID-19 public health restrictions, and that included mask wearing. They supported boosting freedom of speech. They wanted to end official multiculturalism and to cut immigration while dealing with domestic problems here in Canada first. There's lots of things on the platform. You can read it on their website. Their platform doesn't mention Israel or anti-Semitism, but it uses the word globalist when describing Canada's foreign policy, and that word does have anti-Semitic connotations. Aside from the official platform, there is also an unsavory side to some of the party's supporters, and we've reported on this about the ties of this party with neo-Nazis and white supremacists, and with people who wear yellow stars at protest marches against COVID vaccines and compare themselves to Holocaust victims. One party official's been charged with throwing gravel at the Prime Minister. Against all this backdrop, we're welcoming David Freiheit, who says he is double vaccinated. He joins me from his home studio in Montreal. I was listening to, one of your recent podcasts about the experience, and you use the word journey. You were going on a journey, and that's why you put your name in for why you ran.
A journey is a good way to describe it, because it is a process, and it was a process, spiritually before making the decision, and then bureaucratically after having made the decision. I swear to you, I never wanted to run for politics. I may never do it again. We'll just see what the world has in store for us. But I never wanted to do it. You don't leave the practice of law, the what I call the toxic environment of the practice of law, to then jump into the toxic environment of politics. But over the last 2 years, seeing where Canada has gone, and it's not a direction I like or want to see Canada going, spiritually, it was the evolution to make the decision.
You came in sixth place in your riding with 1,400 votes, give or take. I don't know how it is since they've settled.
1,498 votes.
There you go.
not that I'm counting and a little disappointed.
Yes, you are. But tell us how that changed from the party's 2019 results in your riding, where another person ran.
It was a 300% increase, but call me spoiled, or maybe I had unreasonable expectations. I wasn't happy with it. I did think, on the one hand, I thought I could make more of an impact, and I thought let's call it the guerrilla campaigning, doing podcasts, doing stuff that, the people already established don't do. I thought it would have more of an impact. You realize after having run the race that I reached one person at a time, and maybe, a handful at a time. And it was meaningful and it was impactful, and you can convince and change the minds of one person at a time. But then you just realize, like, once you have the media and you reach swaths of people at a time, you're not fighting a battle with the same weapons. And so I had to go convince people one person at a time. And then, mainstream media will, I'll say brainwash, because that's the way I believe it is. They will go and run stories and just reach the entire city to go vote Liberal 53%, like they did again in Westmount. So, but, the party nationwide, threefold increase. I had a 300% increase in our riding. And like people do say, that's 1,500 people in Westmount who heard the message, agreed with the message, and placed enough confidence in me to vote for me. We'll just have to hope that we can do better the next time.
What do you make of the rising support, 800,000 votes for the People's Party of Canada?
And I think it's because enough people who are paying attention and have now had the opportunity to pay attention fully appreciate that there's only one party in Canada that is actual opposition to the powers of the Conservatives, Liberals, and NDP, and even the Bloc, and even the Green Party. I mean, they're all in lockstep on these issues of disregarding constitutional rights, full-blown COVID panic, at the expense of destroying, both the economy, the fabric, and the health of the nation. They're in lockstep on all of this.
What do you make of, first of all, do you agree that the tone of this election and the country at the moment is a lot angrier and scarier than it has been in the last few elections? And what do you make of that change? I mean, you're riding that wave, right? So,
well, I definitely, the tone is angrier. I'll just say this flat out. You can say what you want, with limited exceptions. Violence is where I have a hard line being drawn, without exception. So no throwing gravel, no smashing eggs, period. Bernier got egged, and I think there's unacceptable, period, full stop, no but. As far as the rhetoric goes, it's an election. It's heated. And I'm going to say this, when people say the sentiment and the rhetoric is heated, when you have a prime minister coming out on a podium and stumping his fist down, saying those people are putting us all at risk, referring to anyone who opposes masks or vaccine passports as misogynists or racists. I mean, you have the highest level of political power in the country using that language. That's where it starts. That's not where it ends.
I'm sure you had people push back and say, what are you doing? You're a Jewish guy. There's a lot of controversy about this party. How did you respond to them?
So the funny thing is, I'm not vocal about being Jewish, not out of shame or anything. I don't want people thinking that my religious identity shapes what I would put out in terms of political message. I did not get that type of pushback. What I did get was the standard, oh, that's an extremist party of racists and anti-immigrants. And I was like, well, whenever I got that, I didn't say, well, I'm Jewish and therefore that can't be true, because that's a bad argument. What I did just say is, if you think that, go look at the roster of candidates and come to your own conclusion. And then I also say, you don't even know what the policies are to come to that conclusion. To say that the party's racist or xenophobic or whatever because it wants to curb immigration so that it can deal and properly deal with Canadian issues, you're presupposing that Canadians are all white Catholic males. I mean, you're making racist presuppositions to come to that conclusion.
We have to talk about some of the characters who are in the People's Party of Canada, such as the fellow who was charged in London, who was the party who was charged with throwing gravel, and he has neo-Nazi, leanings on social media from what I was made aware of.
Well, okay. I don't know about this individual's social media past. I know that they do a thorough social media check when you apply for, when you apply to be the candidate in a riding. Let me say, if this is the new standard that you're going to hold an entire party and close to 1 million people hostage by the few who are, there are criminals in the world. And of 1,800,000 people and of 338 candidates, you might get some bad apples. If the new standard now is to judge the entire party as though the exception is the rule, well, then the entire Liberal Party are corrupt and unethical, fill in the blanks.
Let's unpack this issue a little bit, because I have watched your posts on social media where you definitely go after people who use the Holocaust denial trope in their social media.
I don't support Holocaust denial, full stop. So that's one thing. Let's get that clear. And, so there's no misunderstanding. Does that mean I think people should be legally prohibited from engaging in certain discussion? That's a very big secondary issue. I think people should be free to discuss things to the extent it's not, specific incitement of violence. Where I take issue with the comparisons are, on the one hand, sometimes they are insensitive, sometimes they are done on both ends just to shut discussion down, and they don't lead anywhere productive. And generally speaking, also, they are used to reflexively demonize anybody who is espousing an opposing view by calling them, the N-word, which on YouTube we have to say Yahtzee because you can't say the N-word anymore. But I have issues with people using the analogies too flippantly on both ends of the spectrum. It's not everything that is tantamount to 1930s Germany.
Talk to me about anti-vaxxers and the use of the yellow star. Or do you accept those? Because I get freedom of speech, right? But still.
No, for sure. And when I go to the protests, I see people holding up signs comparing Legault to Hitler. I see people with the Jewish stars to symbolize what they feel to be, similar discriminatory practices today. So I don't like it. It's not the way I promote the message. I will, unfortunately and unpopularly, defend their right to do it. These vaccine passport rules are purely discriminatory, and they're purely arbitrary, and they're purely unscientific, and they are causing the same social divisions that we have seen historically. And the idea now that we've gone, you're an anti-vaxxer if you don't want to vaccinate your 12-year-old. We're using that term the way we're using the big lie, vaccine deniers. We're using it to discredit people so that we don't have to address their actual legitimate opinions.
I should ask how old your kids are.
They are 12, 8, and 5. And now the government is talking about compelling vaccination. And it's not compelling. They're just going to deprive you of your civil rights. And they're talking about doing this now on children as young as 5 for a demographic that has a 99.9973 survival of infection rate. There were 15 deaths in Canada of under 19 of 300,000 infected. That's 0.00005% fatality rate, less than the flu. And now the government's going to tell me that my kids are going to have a compromised childhood, that they won't be able to be normal children unless they get double vaccinated with a new vaccine for a virus that poses virtually no risk to them. And if that makes someone an anti-vaxxer, we are abusing language for political purposes.
I want to just put a couple of things which David said in context. He said that when people accuse the party of being racist and xenophobic, they should go check out the candidates who ran. It must be said that most of the candidates were white. He is also correct that Justin Trudeau was found to have violated political ethics standards twice. And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia, Integrity, Community, Quality, and Customer Care. Don't forget, you can be on the CJN Daily if you win the contest that's on now. It's to mark our 100th show that's coming up soon at the end of the month. So write to me and tell me why you've got a good story, or nominate someone else to be on the show. My email is ebessner@thecjn.ca. And we'll close this episode with a sneak peek from someone you'll soon meet on the podcast this week. He's a Canadian teenager, and he's invented the world's first and only free daily prayer book app for Apple Watches.
It's just been downloaded once in like Uganda, Austria, Malaysia, Morocco, Mexico, Singapore, Switzerland, Belgium, Turkey.